The morning sun spilled golden light across Willow Lake, turning the ripples of water into little sparks of fire. Birds called from the pine trees, their echoes bouncing softly in the air. I had driven down the winding gravel road like I had 100 times before, the windows rolled down to let in the familiar scent of cedar and lake water. For me, this wasn't just any place. This cabin was home. My father and I had built half of it with our bare hands. I remembered his voice when I was 12 years old, handing me a hammer that was too big for my grip. "Steady, son. Don't rush. Build it right, and it'll last longer than both of us." Every corner of the cabin was layered with his touch, his carved initials on the dock post, the squeaky screen door he swore he'd fix but never did, the crooked antler rack he'd nailed above the fireplace. Even though he'd passed years ago, I felt his presence strongest here. So when I pulled into the driveway that morning, I expected the same peace. Instead, I slammed on the brakes. Bright orange flags dotted the dirt like warning signs. Men in neon vests and hard hats were stomping around with measuring tape. A flatbed truck idled nearby, loaded with lumber and tools. My heart skipped. I jumped out of my truck. "Hey!" I shouted, striding toward them. "What's going on here? This is private property." One of the workers glanced at me, chewing gum lazily. "We've got orders to prep the place for renovation. New owner wants it done fast." "New owner?" My voice cracked. "This is my cabin." He shrugged, not even meeting my eyes. "Talk to the HOA. We just follow the contract." I felt the world tilt beneath me. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a mistake. A clerical error. Some crossed paperwork. But when I looked at those men hammering survey stakes into the soil where my dad and I had grilled hot dogs after fishing, I knew this was intentional. Without another word, I jumped back in my truck and sped to the HOA office. The office sat in town, a brick building with polished glass doors and a too-perfect lawn. The place always felt cold, more like a bank than something meant for neighbors. And behind that front desk sat Karen, the infamous HOA president, her perfectly curled hair sprayed into place, her lipstick a sharp crimson slash across her face. Everyone in Willow Lake called her HOA Karen, half as a joke and half in fear, because she loved her power. I marched up to her desk, slamming my hands down. "What is happening at my cabin?" I demanded. She didn't flinch. She looked up slowly, her smile tight and fake. "Oh, Mark. Don't be so dramatic. That cabin isn't yours anymore." I stared at her, trying to process her words. "What do you mean it isn't mine?" "I have the deed. My father bought that land 30 years ago." Karen leaned back, folding her hands neatly. "Technically, your paperwork wasn't properly updated when your father passed. According to our bylaws, the HOA retains authority over unregistered properties within the community. The board voted, and we've reallocated it to someone more deserving." My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. "Reallocated? You're telling me you gave my family's cabin to someone else like it was a toy?" Her smile widened, smug and deliberate. "Not just someone else. My son. He's just moved back after finishing college, and he needs a place to settle down. This will be perfect for him. You should be happy it's staying in the community." My blood boiled. "Karen, that cabin is all I have left of my dad. You can't just strip that away. Do you have any idea what it means to me?" She tilted her head, her eyes glinting with something cruel. "Mark, rules are rules. You know how it works. If you'd been more responsible with your paperwork, this wouldn't have happened. Now, if you don't like it, you can file a complaint with the board. But I wouldn't hold your breath, they trust me." Her voice dripped arrogance, like she enjoyed watching me break. I slammed my fist on the counter. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" Karen leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper. I don't think, Mark. I know. Her laughter followed me as I stormed out of the building, my chest burning with rage. I drove aimlessly for hours, barely noticing the road, my mind spinning with fury and disbelief. By evening, I found myself back at the lake, parked on the edge of the dock that hadn't yet been torn down. I sat there with my feet dangling in the water, the reflection of the sunset stretching across the ripples like fire. I whispered aloud, as though my father could hear me. Dad, they took it. Everything you built. Everything we had. She just handed it away like it was nothing. The lump in my throat grew heavier until I could hardly breathe. I clenched the dock rail, tears stinging my eyes. I don't know how to fight her. She has the board, the power, the rules. What do I have? The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, it felt like my father's voice was there in the whisper. Don't rush. Build it right, and it'll last longer than both of us. I closed my eyes. He had always been calm in the face of storms. He never believed in lashing out, he believed in building, in planning, in doing things the right way. That night, as the stars lit up above the dark water, I made a promise. I won't let her win, Dad. Not like this. If she wants to play with rules, then I'll beat her at her own game. And with that vow, a plan began to form in my heart. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. 2 weeks passed. Every day I drove past the lake cabin, and every day my heart sank deeper. Karen's son had already moved in, swaggering around like he had earned it. He posted photos on Facebook, posing on the dock, captioning it, "My new cabin life." The comments were full of his friends congratulating him. But those weren't just pictures of a cabin. They were my memories. My father's fingerprints were in every nail, every plank. Watching him erase that was like watching someone spit on my father's grave. I wanted to scream, to fight, to smash their smug little victory. But instead, I bit down on my anger and buried it deep. Because I knew rage alone wouldn't win this battle. Karen ruled through rules. She wrapped herself in bylaws and technicalities like armor. If I wanted to beat her, I'd have to use her own weapons. So I did. Every night, after long shifts at work, I stayed up reading the HOA bylaws. Page after page, clause after clause. I took notes, highlighted, researched property law online. At first, it felt hopeless. The rules were written to protect the HOA, not homeowners. But then I found it. The survey lines. Buried in the old community maps, I discovered something extraordinary. The HOA's own head office, the very building where Karen sat smugly dictating everyone's lives, wasn't even fully theirs. Part of the structure overlapped onto my father's original parcel. A mistake from decades ago that no one had noticed. Legally, that strip of land was mine. And if I wanted to, I had every right to fence it. When I realized, I almost laughed. My father's words echoed in my head, "Build it right, and it'll last longer than both of us." I filed for the permits, showed the old maps to the county, and waited. When the stamped approvals arrived in the mail, I held them like gold. The time had come. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. A crew I'd hired pulled up with lumber, posts, and concrete. I directed them with steady hands, though my heart thundered in my chest. By 9 o'clock, the first posts were in the ground. By 10, wooden slats stretched upward. By noon, the fence towered high and proud, cutting straight across the HOA office parking lot, slicing their driveway in half. Neighbors gathered, whispering. Some cheered quietly under their breath. Others filmed on their phones. That's when I heard her shriek. "What do you think you're doing, Mark?" Karen stormed out of the glass doors like an angry queen. Her lipstick was smeared from shouting, her heels clicked furiously on the pavement. Behind her, her son leaned against the doorway, smirking like the whole scene was entertainment. I turned calmly, brushing sawdust from my hands. Morning, Karen. I'm just putting up a fence. On my property. She stomped closer, face red. This is harassment. This is illegal. You can't just block the HOA office. Wordlessly, I pulled the folded papers from my pocket. The signed county permits, stamped and sealed. I held them up. So the crowd could see. Actually, I can. This land is mine. Always has been. You should have read the maps more carefully before you stole what wasn't yours. Her eyes flicked over the documents, and I saw it, the first crack in her confidence. Her son snorted. This is pathetic. You think a fence is going to get your cabin back? I locked eyes with him. No. But it's going to show everyone exactly what kind of person your mother is. She hides behind rules when they help her, but screams when those same rules turn against her. Karen's voice trembled now, not with anger but with desperation. Mark, be reasonable. You're hurting the whole community by doing this. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice so it cut through the air. No, Karen. You hurt this community. You handed my father's cabin to your son like it was party favor candy. You trampled over the people you're supposed to serve. This fence. It's not just wood. It's proof. Proof that you're not untouchable. The crowd murmured louder. Neighbors began shouting. She's been abusing power for years. Finally someone stood up to her. She charged me $200 for painting my mailbox the wrong shade of green. The noise grew, a tide of frustration rising against her. For the first time, Karen looked small. By late afternoon, the fence was finished. 10 feet tall, solid, unbroken. It sealed the HOA office's main entrance completely. Staff had to crawl around the side just to leave. Karen stood there shaking, her perfect image crumbling in front of everyone. That very evening, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Ironically, they had to hold it in the parking lot because they couldn't access their own office. I stood at the back, silent, as neighbor after neighbor voiced their grievances. Stories poured out of overreach, fines, favoritism, bullying. The board members, once Karen's loyal allies, shifted uncomfortably under the weight of the community's anger. Finally, the vote came. Hands raised. One by one. The decision was unanimous. Karen was removed as president of the HOA. Her son's ownership of the cabin was voided. The deed, updated and corrected, was restored to me. Karen collapsed into a chair, her face pale, her power gone. That night, I returned to the cabin. The key trembled in my hand as I slid it into the lock. When the door creaked open, the smell of cedar and lake water filled me. The sight of the crooked antler rack, the squeaky screen door, it was all still there, waiting. I stepped inside slowly, tears blurring my vision. My father's voice whispered again in the stillness of the room, "Build it right, son." I touched the wooden walls, whispering aloud. "We did it, Dad. Justice, not revenge." Behind me, neighbors began gathering outside. Some brought food, others tools. They wanted to help me repair what Karen's son had damaged. For the first time in years, the community felt united, not under fear, but under fairness.